Look at the clock on your wall or the corner of your phone. You think that number is telling you the truth. You think your body needs it to survive. But the concept of a 24-hour day is a modern, corporate invention. Deep down, your cells are running on a completely different rhythm. And when we finally cut the wire and let the brain choose its own time, things get terrifyingly out of hand. On July 16, 1962, a 23-year-old French geologist named Michel Siffre did something that his colleagues thought was suicide. He climbed down into Skarason Cavern, a frozen abyss deep beneath the Maritime Alps. The cave was a brutal environment. The temperature was perpetually at the freezing point. The humidity was 99%, and it was completely, utterly dark. Siffre didn't go down there to study rocks. He went to become a human guinea pig. He brought a small tent, a cot, a single flashlight, some canned food, and thousands of gallons of water. But he left behind the three things that dictate every second of your modern existence. He brought no watch, no calendar, and he had no access to the sun. He wanted to answer a fundamental question that science had never been able to test. What does the human mind do when it is completely divorced from time? Siffre's setup was simple but strict. Every time he woke up, every time he ate a meal, and every time he prepared to sleep, he used a field telephone to call his research team stationed on the surface. He didn't ask them what time it was. They were forbidden from telling him. He simply stated what he was doing. I am waking up. I am eating. I am turning off the light. On the surface, his team logged the exact real-world dates and times of his calls. Inside the cave, Siffre kept a manual diary. He attempted to track the passing days based purely on his gut feeling. For the first few days, everything felt normal. He read books. He examined ice formations. He ate when he felt hungry and slept when he felt tired. But deep in the dark, a hidden biological mechanism began to warp. Without the sun to reset his brain every morning, his internal master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, went rogue. It was no longer bound by Earth's rotation. On September 14th, the surface team picked up the field telephone. It was Siffre. He was cheerful. He told them he had finished his books, his supplies were holding up well, and he was looking forward to completing his 2-month experiment in a few weeks. The surface team listened in dead silence. They didn't know how to tell him the truth. Siffre thought it was August 20th. He had lost track of 24 entire days. When they finally told him that his experiment was over and pulled him out of the abyss, Siffre suffered a massive psychological shock. He couldn't comprehend it. His diary was short by hundreds of hours. His mind was completely convinced that his days were matching the world above. But science immediately realized something profound. Siffre's brain hadn't simply failed to count. It had reprogrammed itself. When researchers analyzed the surface logs, they discovered a stunning consistency. Siffre hadn't been living in a chaotic, random schedule. His body had automatically settled into a highly structured, highly predictable pattern. But his days didn't last 24 hours. They lasted 24 hours and 30 minutes. Every single cycle, his body pushed his bedtime back by exactly half an hour. Within weeks, his internal schedule had completely desynchronized from the surface. He was sleeping soundly while his team on the surface was eating lunch. He was eating breakfast while the rest of the world was fast asleep. This was the birth of circadian biology. It proved that your body does not instinctively know what a 24-hour day is. If you remove the sun, your internal operating system automatically defaults to its own inherent rhythm. We are all, by nature, running just a little bit slow. But Siffre wasn't satisfied. 10 years later, in 1972, he went back down. This time he chose a cave in Texas, and he stayed for a brutal 6 months. He wanted to see what happens when the isolation stretches past the breaking point. And what he found was even more disturbing. During his Texas experiment, Siffre's biological clock didn't just slide by 30 minutes. It shattered. On several occasions, Siffre would call the surface team, tell them he was going to sleep for a short nap, wake up, and call them back to start his day. To Siffre, it felt like a perfectly normal 8-hour rest, but on the surface, his team watched the clock spin. He had slept for 16 continuous hours. His waking periods began to stretch out to 24, 30, and eventually 48 hours straight. He was living a 2-day cycle without even realizing it. His body would stay awake for 36 hours, crash for 12, and wake up feeling entirely refreshed. The boundary of a normal human day had melted away completely. But the true danger of living without time wasn't physical. It was cognitive. As the weeks dragged on into months, Siffre's mind began to unravel in a highly specific way. He didn't experience terrifying visual hallucinations. He experienced something worse: the total disintegration of his short-term memory. He wrote in his journal that he would think of a task, like checking his battery levels, and by the time he stood up to walk across the tent, the thought was completely erased. He described his mind as a chalkboard being constantly wiped clean by a damp cloth. He couldn't remember what he had done an hour prior. Without a linear timeline of hours and days to anchor his experiences, his brain stopped packaging his life into memories. His past, his present, and his future began to collapse into a single agonizing blur. He was trapped in an eternal, contextless now. He became so severely depressed that he contemplated suicide, saved only by the realization that he couldn't remember where he had stored his safety equipment. Time, it turns out, is the glue that holds human identity together. Since Siffre's pioneering work, other scientists have pushed the limits of chrono-isolation. In 1989, an Italian interior designer named Stefania Follini spent 4 months in a buried plexiglass capsule in New Mexico. Her experience mirrored Siffre's, but went even further. Her internal day expanded so drastically that she routinely stayed awake for over 20 hours and slept for 10. Her menstrual cycle stopped entirely. She lost over 17 pounds. Her perception of time became so warped that when she was finally released, she believed she had only been underground for 2 months. When asked to estimate the passing of a single minute, she would count to 60, but it would take her nearly 5 real-world minutes to do it. Her brain had slowed its processing down to a crawl. These experiments reveal an uncomfortable truth about what it means to be human. We like to think of ourselves as independent, autonomous beings who control our own minds. But the reality is that your brain is deeply biologically tethered to the cosmos. You are a creature designed to sync with a spinning rock. The light hitting your retina every morning isn't just a signal to wake up. It is a calibration tool. It's a daily system upgrade that keeps your cells, your hormones, your memory, and your sanity aligned with reality. And here is the part nobody talks about. Modern society has built an artificial cave of its own. We live under fluorescent lights that never change intensity. We stare at glowing rectangles at 2 o'clock in the morning. We drink caffeine to force our bodies awake when our internal clocks are screaming for rest. We sleep in blackened rooms with white noise machines, and we wake up to loud electronic alarms. We have effectively severed our connection to the natural cycle of the earth. We are living in a permanent state of mild time isolation. We look at our clocks and think we are in control. But your body doesn't care about the numbers on your phone. It is still trying to run that ancient, primitive program deep inside the dark. And when you fight that program long enough, your sleep fragments, your memory degrades, your sense of self starts to wear thin. We think we conquered the night. We think we mastered time by breaking it down into precise, mechanical increments. But Michel Siffre proved that time is not a luxury we invented. It is a biological cage that keeps our minds from drifting out into the void. We turned off the sun, and we replaced it with a digital grid. And we are only just beginning to realize what happens when the grid fails.